Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay in the back? So I'm not going to use the mic or whatever. All right, given the choice between laundry detergents, would you choose a detergent that got your clothes super clean, like your white's the whitest, or would you...
Hello there. Welcome again to Diary of a Speaker podcast, where we talk all about public speaking, the art and the craft. And we always have great guests come join us. Today we have a special guest who is with us here. His name is Christian Espinosa, and he's going to be here to tell us about the stagecraft. We're talking about public speaking stagecraft. And I know we are going to have a great time. But before we bring in Christian, can you please share this episode with all your friends? If you've got any question, ask. If you have got any comment to talk about this podcast, we appreciate feedback. And now let's go and meet our special guest today to talk about public speaking stagecraft. Hello, Christian.
Hey, Anthony. How's it going today?
It's going on well. How about your side?
Doing good. It's a little hard to watch that little clip of myself. I think I've made a lot of improvements since then. So my own worst critiquer, I guess, of my performances.
Yeah, it's good to be a own critique of your performance. It's not, and do you get the courage to rewatch your performances? Because I myself, I after I perform, I'm like, oh, I didn't do this right, I didn't do that right, and I'm like, oh, uh, but I work it on it. I work on it the next time that I get a chance.
Yeah.
So yes, we believe that there has got some improvement. When was that?
That was, I think that was in 2021. Yeah, around 2021, 2021. So like
Uh,
a little over 3 years ago. I think that was early 2021.
And what was the event?
That was, I was asked to speak for a military unit on leadership. And I have a speech put together that I talk about self leadership. And it's based on my first book, The Smartest Person in the Room. And I think leadership starts with yourself. And that's what my talk was about. Plus, there's a lot of questions and answers at the end of that one as well.
That's good. And now, even before we go deeper, maybe you can introduce yourself to the person who's hearing you for the very first time. Who is Christian? Where is he from? What is he doing?
Yeah, I'm Christian Espinosa. I currently live in Tempe, Arizona. I and someone likes to take risk. I used to skydive. Now I race fast cars. I do public speaking. I'm a guest on a podcast and a host. So there's a lot of speaking involved with what I do. I do a lot of sales for my business. I have a cybersecurity company, Blue Goat Cyber. We do medical device cybersecurity. So I do a lot of speaking for my business as well about medical device cybersecurity. And I've been speaking in some capacity, I would say since the early 90s. I used to teach college. So that's a form of speaking. And then I've been asked to speak a lot about my adventures, my blood clot survivor story and my books.
So you're also a writer.
Yes, I'm also a writer. Yeah. So I write a book and then I have a talk that goes along with a book. I think that's usually my approach.
How many books have you written so far?
I've completed two, and I'm working on two other ones concurrently. One of them is about medical device cybersecurity, which I will be speaking about in a few conferences in October. And then the other book is about the story we tell ourselves, which I'll be working on a speech for that book as well.
Oh, okay. I think I had seen the two that you've done, and I was thinking maybe you've done some more others. So I came across the book, The Smartest Person in the Room by Christian Espinosa. Uh, what's that all about?
That's letting you don't want to be the smart. You want to be able to work. And first business that I sold, 99% of my problems were because people egos and them wanting to be people. Hard to develop emotional intelligence in my staff, which was highly rationally intelligent or had a high IQ. I worked hard to develop the EQ, the emotional intelligence portion, to complement the IQ. And the book is about how to improve your emotional intelligence. And
Okay.
communication is part of that.
Oh, that's cool. And then the other one that I came across was the in between, life in the micro. What's in there?
That book is a sort of focused memoir, I would categorize it as, where I've got things wrong and got things right in my life from the context of being too focused on a macro level goal, like a big, massive goal, and I've skipped over things right in front of me. So it's about me coming to terms with I need to have more balance on chasing those big goals while paying attention to the things in front of me because in the past I let relationships fail, my health fail, my problems with my wealth, all because I was so hyper focused on a big goal. And I'm trying to achieve a little more balance now.
Hmm. And going back to when you were starting to speak, because now we know that you speak a lot, based on what it is that you do. What was your very first time that you ever spoke, if you can remember? Because we love hearing first time experiences.
Well, I don't know if we count it as speaking, but to me it was speaking. It was the first time I taught college and presented in front of a class of 30 people. I was super nervous and I was well organized, but as the first time I'd done that, and I was like, man, these 30 people are here to listen to me. I better get it right because I don't want to waste their time and I better be prepared and I need to learn how to read the room. So it was like that was the first time I had spoken, and I just remember, I still remember that day because it was the first time I'd spoken that many in front of that many people.
Why do you specifically remember it? Is did you just did you butcher something? Did you sweat? Did you
I
perspire?
did sweat. Yeah, I did sweat. I sweated a lot. I was super
Uh,
nervous. I probably fumbled my words. And what struck me the most is I've got the attention of like 30 adults at once, and it made me realize like it is on me to make sure I'm not wasting their time. So I really put a lot of pressure on myself to deliver. I know it was a class, but it's still like I wanted to keep them engaged and not bore them because I remember how many classes I had sat through where the instructor was totally boring and didn't really care if we were paying attention. I did not want to be that instructor or
mm,
that professor. So yeah, I put a lot of pressure on myself about it, and I think I did well. My students gave me good evaluations.
mm. But we can get it from you. I mean, you're a risk taker, as you said, and and the reason I bring that risk taker aspect in here is because we are reaching many people who may not have never had their first experience in public speaking, and for all the known reasons that public speaking is one of the most scariest things someone can do. And how would you advise, how what tips would you give someone who's never done it, someone who's wishing or desiring to be a public speaker, and hasn't started yet?
The tip is to start. Like when I first started, I joined Toastmasters, which is an international organization where you practice speaking and you get feedback. So it's a step where it's a kind of a low pressure situation. It's with a bunch of your peers that are part of the group, and they have a program to go through.
Hmm.
So I would recommend starting something like that, and I would also recommend, besides Toastmasters, getting your message down and understand why you want to speak and realize it's not about you, it's about the audience. We often get nervous because we're so worried about our performance versus the audience. And the message is for the audience. And if we take the focus off of us and focus on the audience, I think it shifts that nervousness a little bit and realize we're here to serve the audience. So the focus should be on them and how they're receiving the message, not how we're delivering it. I mean, how we
Mm.
deliver matters, but it's really the focus on them and see if they're receiving it properly, if we're making eye contact, if it's resonating, versus just worrying about ourselves.
And I know you pay much attention to how you deliver, and this is where we are based our topic of today, public speaking, stagecraft. Can you maybe go deeper into that? Just pour out whatever it is that you would want the person listening to get from our conversation today on stagecraft.
Yeah, when I say stagecraft, I'm talking about the entire speaking. When I first spoke, I didn't understand stagecraft. So I'd wander around the stage. I wouldn't make intentional eye contact. I didn't pause long enough. I didn't modulate my voice enough. And these are all stagecraft elements. So you're to take your speaking to the next level. It's not just about the words; it's about the delivery, and
Mm-hmm.
these aspects of stagecraft come into play. And it's almost like you're acting to some degree.
Mm.
So what I've learned and what I've shifted towards is memorizing my speech. Maybe not exactly word for word, but pretty close to it. So when I'm delivering it, it's super intentional. When I say a specific or delivering a specific message, I stand at a certain part of the stage. When I deliver a different message, I might stand at a different part of the stage. But I don't just wander back and forth like I used to. It's very intentional. My movement, my delivery, my pauses, the eye contact, the stories I tell are very intentional. And combining all of that is what I'm referring to as stagecraft. And it is very, at least for me, it's been very challenging. I can certainly walk up and deliver a speech, you know, on the fly, but to deliver it in a way that is super impactful requires you to put all that together, all the things I mentioned. That's the stagecraft.
It's not like we imagine just because I'm knowledgeable, I can be called on stage at any particular moment and I go speak whatever it is in my mind. I go wing it. You're not going to be as effective as you should be.
Yeah, winging it may work part of the time, but if you want to be a public speaker and a paid public speaker, your speech needs to work all the time. Otherwise, you're not going to get a referral and you're not going to get invited back because you can't have one great one and one bad one because you're winging it. So to remove that risk of your speech being horrible, you need to memorize it, practice it, rehearse it, including like the stagecraft elements, and find a group of people to practice it in front of and ask for specific feedback. This is like anything else in life. You've got to practice, and to get one speech dialed in, even like a 40-minute speech, for me, that is several months of practice and refining the words and making sure it's landing with the audience, it's resonating with the audience, and making sure if I'm telling a vulnerable story that I can hold my composure. I don't want to break down crying in front of 1,200 people, but I want to be able to tell a story that's impactful, and I want them to feel it more than me. That these are the things about stagecraft that matter, and it's not easy, not for me.
Is- Yeah, it could be easy for some other people, but it could be easier as we are speaking. But then it's important when you're starting out, and not only when you're starting out, but as you're growing in your public speaking career, if we can call it, to pay attention to what it is that you want to deliver. And not only what you want to deliver, but how you are going to deliver it, as says Christian.
Yeah, I would add one thing to that. That's certainly true. I try to pay attention with intentionality of how I want the audience to feel in certain parts of my speech. Ultimately, the speeches we remember the most are the ones that we felt the most, not the ones that were the most educational. If it's education combined with entertainment and has an element of personal story that makes someone feel a certain way, they're going to remember that much more than just a informative speech about a topic. So I look at it from that lens and make sure I'm crafting the speech in a way and delivering it in a way where the audience feels what I want them to feel at certain aspects of the speech. And sometimes this is challenging because the audience may not feel what I feel. So that's why it's important to practice with other people, because you may think the audience is feeling this way because you yourself, the person giving the speech, feels that way, but they may feel totally different
Mm,
because they're not you.
mm-hmm,
And that's where it's important to get that feedback.
mm. And you're talking of including stories in whatever it is that you're delivering, is going to be as not only educative but also entertaining and have some emotion or something like this. Now, I know, as you mentioned at some point, that you have a personal story, and I'm curious to hear what's this story, the blood clot story. Please tell us. I haven't heard it. I just want to hear it, and just as you would give it in a speech.
Well, I've got several personal stories depending on the speech. One I talked about recently is my blood clots that I had in about a year and a half ago, or two and a half years ago, and almost didn't survive. So I was working out in my basement. I had just done 100 burpees. I've done Ironman triathlons, so I was in pretty good shape. I would consider myself in really good shape. And then the back of my left leg started hurting. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and she said, "You probably have blood clots." And I was like, "There's no way I have blood clots. I'm a Ironman triathlete. Things like this don't happen to people like me." So she told me to go to the hospital and made me promise her I'd go to the hospital. I hate hospitals, so I was super reluctant. But I went to the hospital anyway because I didn't want to break my promise to her. And when I got to the hospital, they took my blood pressure. It was like super high. It was like 190 over something. So I thought, man, maybe something is wrong. And then after waiting a little bit, they took me in the room. They did what's called a Doppler ultrasound, where they run this wand over my leg. They ran it over my leg, and the technician that did the ultrasound had a weird expression on his face. So I knew something was wrong. And they took me back to the waiting room, and finally a doctor came out. The doctor came out and very matter of factly said, "You've got 6 blood clots in your left leg." And I don't know anything about blood clots. So I asked what it meant. He said it means I can die or have a stroke at any moment. And that's not good news to hear. So I started freaking out a little bit. I was there by myself. My nearest family member was like 800 miles away. And I started crying, like not sobbing, but just like tears were going down my face. And I was thinking, man, my life is over. Did I live a good life? Was I a good person? Did I take risks that I loved? Ultimately, did I matter? And the doctor noticed me freaking out and said something that I'll never forget. He told me kind of in a dismissive way. He's like, "Oh, don't worry. I see this all the time." And it kind of like snapped me out of it. And I said, I got angry about it, his response. I said, "Well, I don't. This is a first for me." And after that, I went to my car. They gave me some blood thinners and just sat there crying and thinking, man, my whole life is over. Everything I was doing was off the table. I couldn't travel because there's the risk of a clot breaking off and killing you. I couldn't run. I couldn't go up for a hike. I really couldn't do anything but sit in my basement depressed. So it took me a long time to get over that. Yeah, but I'm over it now. So
Wow. What could have been the cause? Did you ever find out? Do you have any idea?
I think it's a couple factors. One of them, I got the Johnson and Johnson COVID vaccine, which is attributable to blood clots. The other factor is I felt trapped in my life. I felt trapped in a relationship that was long distance. I felt trapped in the company that I sold my company to. I felt trapped where I live. I felt trapped because of COVID. This is during COVID. I couldn't do anything either because of that. So I think all these feelings of entrapment combined with that vaccine, I think my body manifested these clots because basically my veins, the blood flow is trapped in the veins, which is a manifestation of how I felt.
Do you have some lessons or anything that accompanies that story as you're telling it on stage? And like, which are the instances?
Yeah, my lesson is I survived, and I felt grateful for that. And for a long time, I was comfortable with surviving, but that is not my personality. It was causing me to be depressed and eventually slip into this state of feeling caged and trapped again. Ironically, the thing that caused me to have the blood clots, I was slipping back in that stage because I was just surviving. I wanted to be someone that thrived. I like to take risk. I like to have a zeal and a zest for life and go for things. And I felt that that was taken away and that was making me depressed. So one day, I remember looking at the blood thinners because I had to take these blood thinners every freaking day. I remember one day looking at the bottle and I just threw it across the room and I decided I'm going to reclaim my life. And that's what I did. I went and got every test possible of my blood. I got a new Doppler ultrasound on my leg that had the previous clots in there to make sure there were no more clots. And I decided to take my life back in my own hands and reclaim my life and realized, I realized at that point that nobody cares about my life more than me. A doctor I saw for 30 minutes doesn't care about my life as much as me. They're going to make a quick decision, and I'm not going to live with that decision the rest of my life. I want to live my life the way I want to live it. So that's what I did. And that was about a year and a half ago when I made that shift. So I went through a year of depression with a little bit of gratefulness, then depression. But now I feel like my life is thriving. I feel like I'm back where I want to be. I have agency over it. No one's telling me what I have to do. I'm aware of the risk. And I've developed the courage and the confidence to start a new business, which I'm succeeding at, to do more speaking, to do all the things I want to do. And I think that's important. We all go through these moments in life where we're just surviving. But I
Mhm.
think it's important to ask ourselves, do we just want to survive or do we want to thrive? And the question I ask myself, because I've read a lot of books about people dying and they're on their deathbed and the regrets they have. And it's almost always regrets of not doing something they know they should have done. And I don't want to have those regrets when I'm on my deathbed. I'm confident I will not have those because I went for the things I want to go for. I've built the relationships I want to build. I've taken the risk and I've lived the life I want to live.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. And now to the person who's listening to this, have you taken the risks? Have you lived the life that you have always imagined yourself to be living? And in this case, if you're a public speaker, have you gone to the levels that you have imagined yourself before? If you've never been a public speaker, what's that's preventing you from taking that step and taking that risk and living your life to the full? Don't let that be you at the end of life where you said, I should have spoken, I should have shared my story, I should have educated a few more people in life, I should have given my insights to people to help them in life. Don't let that be you. Take an action. Take that from Christian today and take an action. In your speaking journey, Christian, which could have been your most inspiring moment, or that time that you remember and you say, "Oh yeah, I did that." That time that you gave a speech, and maybe it's what the feedback was from the audience. Maybe it was what went back into your pocket. What was that?
I gave a speech in Dana Point, California, to a large group as a large conference. There's probably 2,000 people in the audience, and it was a TED style talk, about 12 minutes. And for some reason, I nailed that speech. Everything went super well. I had it was the first time I was backstage, like a green room, and they're miking me up, and I felt a lot of pressure. And when I stepped on the stage, I just nailed it. And after that, I got a standing ovation, which is a good feeling. And then after the talk, there was like socials, dinners, and stuff, and everybody would come up to me and tell me how awesome the speech was and my talk was, and they wanted to talk to me. And I that was the first time I had done so well in a speech, and the first time I had the audience acknowledge it to that degree, and it felt really good. It felt like I was making an impact, not just boring people. And it was a big enough impact where they wanted to talk to me afterwards. It's not like they're like, oh, I'm glad that guy's done talking. I never want to see him again. It's like they still wanted to hear me, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, that's good. It's always good to know that we are making an impact in someone's life. And when we get that feedback after we've delivered a speech, what a feeling that one is. So I feel
Yeah.
you. I get you. I'm with you there. So those are the times that we just treasure, when I've given a speech and people are on their feet clapping, and then everybody wants to flock around you after the speech is over. They are beautiful moments. But also, as we have some people who are inspired in the monetary aspect, those people who would want to take it as a career to put bread on the table and maybe build mansions and drive jets. What has that been for you? You, what has been your income levels that you've most admired, and what has are the challenges maybe that you've met along the way? You can share both.
Yeah. For me, I've done a lot of talks where to get good that I didn't get paid at. I still do them today. Uh, I'm not doing this full time. I'm building a cybersecurity business. But in the past, when I did more coaching and more freelance work, I did paid speeches. And what the way I look at it is, if you want to get paid $10,000 for a speech, you got to deliver 10 times that much value. So that's going to be $100,000 worth of value. And you have to come up with a speech that is in alignment with the amount you want to get paid. Uh, and that same speech you gave for free may not be the speech you need to give for $10,000, because that's where all that stagecraft comes into play. And for me, I attended some training at Heroic Public Speaking. It was like, I think it's 8 months of training, 4 months prep about writing your speech, and then 4 months where you practice your speech in front of an audience, and you work on that stagecraft, and you get feedback, and that you're videoed and critiqued to a very fine degree. And that journey was extremely important to me, and I think that helps. Has helped me if I want to get a paid speaking engagement, get a paid speaking engagement at a higher ticket price.
Could you be willing maybe to share with us what has been your highest, if it's okay with you?
The highest I've gotten, which includes travel, is $15,000.
$15,000
Mm-hmm.
for a
And
keynote.
that was for a private corporate event. So you also, if you're looking for paid speaking, you have to pick your audience and your niche. And I talk about leadership quite a bit. There's a lot of interest in leadership talks, and specifically, corporations have a budget for that when they're doing private training for the corporation. You're not going to do it at a public type conference. You probably won't get paid that amount.
Hmm. Wonderful. So now, because we've heard that you do a lot of things, being a risk taker, having a cyber security company, you're writing, you're speaking, and maybe some other things that you've not shared with us. How do you balance things? Because there are people who have a challenge on balancing life.
I try to focus on one thing for an extended period of time. In my first book, I wrote about monotasking, which is doing one thing with concentrated effort. It's the opposite of multitasking. So on my calendar, I write down for an hour block of time, I'm going to do this one thing, and that's it. That means I'm not going to check email. I'm not checking text messages or anything else. I'm just hyper focused, and that makes me more productive. From a balance perspective, that helps me during the day. I also realize in life that we go through these phases where we have to be hyper focused on something for a long period of time. At least that's how it works for me. So I'm okay taking 3 months and being super focused on my company's website, search engine optimization, for instance, and making everything else secondary, make that the priority. And then the next 3 months, I might focus on something else. So it's not about a balance per se. I think a lot of us want to have this balanced life where we think every day is completely balanced. I think that's okay, but I think it may be hindering some of us because if you are so well balanced or so well rounded, you may not have a point. So it's important to focus on something for me for a concentrated amount of time in a period of time.
Hmm. And we already heard about some books that you've mentioned that are in the process.
Hmm.
And man, I know there could be much more with you going on. So, what could be other things that we could expect to see from you in the future?
Well, right now I will be speaking about medical device cybersecurity, and I talked about my personal story with the blood clots. So when I give a talk or speech, I think it needs to be going through the writing process for me needs to be transformational to me, and I want it to be transformational for the audience. So I am working on the talks I'm going to give on medical device cybersecurity, but I want to incorporate my blood clot story because a medical device, that Doppler ultrasound device, if it wasn't for that device, I may have died. So when I approach, even though I'm talking about an expert in a specific niche, I am working to incorporate that story and make sure the audience is going to take away both knowledge, but be entertained and also understand something about me personally. I think we need to have those elements. And then the one of the new books I'm working is about the story we tell ourselves. So
Hmm.
as I'm going through that book, I'm thinking about okay, how do I articulate the key concepts in this book in a talk, and how can I make this talk polished enough where I can get paid for it. So those are the things I'm working on.
Hmm. That's beautiful. And we know that there are people who could be interested to follow up with you as you are going to work on those talks, as you are going to write your new books, and in the future. How is that possible? How can they connect with you from here henceforth?
They can connect with me on my website, christianespinoza.com. I'm also on most social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Those are a few of the good ones.
Okay. So, everybody, you can go to christianespinosa.com and connect with Christian. We really thank you for coming to this podcast. We appreciate your time here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anthony, for having me on.
Yes. And before you go, you could want to leave us with some last words that we could always remember. We like asking that. Something that we can always remember here. Which are they?
In the context of public speaking or really anything in life, we have to look at it like if my mission, my message, the impact I want to have, if I'm crystal clear on that, the obstacles in front of me, like maybe the fear of speaking, will melt away. So I think if you do the reflection and the homework and the work and realize with conviction what you want to get out to the world, what your purpose is, then you'll have more courage to take those steps and work through the obstacles.
Wow. Thank you for those words. So be crystal clear on what it is that you want. You want to be a public speaker, be crystal clear on what you want to say, where you want to say it. Yeah, so says Christian. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Christian. And also, we want to thank each and every person who's been tuned. Whether you're tuned in live or you get to see this as a recorded version, we really appreciate you coming. And please give us some feedback. We appreciate that. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on www.diaryofaSpeaker.com. And we appreciate that. And share it with all your friends. Let's keep speaking. Let's keep sharing our stories, and let's keep inspiring other people in all the ways that we can. Thank you. That's it for today. I've been your host, Anthony Morore, and together with our wonderful guest today, Christian Espinosa, saying bye for now.